Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Terry Scholey's March and Spring 2022 forecast, brought to you by GavsWeatherVids. March 2022 prediction for the UK and Ireland: changeable and somewhat wetter than average, but some warm early spring days, turning wet, perhaps windy towards mid-March, colder around the equinox and briefly warmer into the final week, showery at the end. That's it in a nutshell, in yet another, sorry if I have to keep repeating myself, milder than average month, but will probably end up wetter than average. After a fine start, mostly in the north, a partially blocked situation, always a headache for forecasters, will give an unsettled first week with mist and some hill fog accompanied by occasional rain or showers. Pressure then rises to give a few finer, perhaps quite sunny early spring days, but it'll be chilly for a while with overnight slight frost before eventually becoming milder. The second week could even become rather warm as winds turn into a southerly direction, but the fine early spring weather should be relatively short-lived, with showers initially in the west spreading to most parts before mid-March. It could also become quite blustery with gales possible in the west. Solar lunar factors then suggest the third week could become particularly changeable, wet at times and windy at first with gales in the west. Although mild to begin with, it's expected to turn much colder from the north around the vernal equinox or towards the final week when snow could occur on northern hills. Another finer, perhaps somewhat warmer interval is then possible in the south, but it may turn chilly further north with overnight slight frost. Showers then probably return towards month's end. That could be heavy in the south, giving thunder. We've also got Terry's spring forecast as well. So spring 2022 preamble. The outstanding feature since the new year has been the unusually cold conditions in the stratosphere percolating into the troposphere above the North Pole, which has led to a strong jet stream and an unsettled, windy but very mild winter across the UK. But changes are already underway, with somewhat of a reversal to a warming phase that encourages northern blocking common in the spring. A partially blocked situation at present is causing forecasting problems, with models often unreliable in these circumstances. So I turn to the trusty solar lunar graph to assist me. Like all long-range forecasting tools, it's far from perfect, but does give a trend. But let's look at some other considerations first. The current phase of the SOI is in a weak to moderate El Niño, which favours a colder coming season. Looking at the circulation patterns from the two main nodally adjusted solar lunar study years, a cold March and April is also favoured, but with a much warmer May. Looking at the currently very strong easterly QBO, a warmer March and May were suggested, especially the latter, with a chilly April. March was the wettest month, May the driest. April had a dry trend, but with a couple of very wet months also in the series. Dry, relatively mild Januaries like this year are relatively uncommon. This came up with a similar result temperature-wise, but March was drier together with May. There were also dry Aprils, but two very wet ones also. Those years on a similar Halley cycle phase to be present, preceded by a mild or very mild February, mild winter or mild February, yet again preceded a milder or warmer than average March and May, with a cooler April. A cold April, though, was much more clear-cut. When the England and Wales rainfall was considered, the Marches tended to be dry and stunningly all the Mays. April also tended to be drier than average, but yet again, those two very wet Aprils were still present. The spring prediction has proved particularly difficult this year, so confidence is only low to medium, so please don't take it too seriously, simply use it as a guide. Spring 2022 prediction: a wettish, very mixed March with cold spells in April. That could be wintry. May should be the driest month, but also coolish at times, compensated by a possible heat wave in the second half. Concentrated firstly on possible cold spells through the spring. That could be wintry, perhaps with snow. This mostly over hills in the north and east, but maybe further south in April. We can also expect some late, possibly damaging frost, particularly in view of that the growing season is already a good fortnight in advance. So be prepared for colder spells later in March, during the first half of April, maybe as late as the final week, and another possible into the second week of May. And a spring of sharp temperature contrast, a warmer interval is possible briefly in the second week of March, and perhaps in the south around the turn of the month. of a warm or very warm spell may occur just after mid-April, with another around the 3rd week of May. That could be very warm, even hot, before May probably ends on a cooler note. As far as rainfall is concerned, March should see totals close to or maybe somewhat above normal, with the wettest spell probably in the 3rd week. March may then end on a showery note, with some sun and some thunder may occur. This could extend into early April, which is proving a tricky month to predict because it will depend on the exact and the extent of high pressure over Greenland. Common in April can extend into the UK, but it does suggest that the north and west should be drier in April than the south and east, where it may end up wetter than normal. Snow is possible mostly over hills in the north, but may occur briefly further south in cold, raw spells, most likely into the 2nd and final weeks. May stands out this year as perhaps the driest of the coming spring months. Like April, the north and west could see some of the driest weather, particularly in the first half of the month. The south in particular may also be subject to thundering intervals, especially during the first week. That could be quite warm and humid, and into the final week. Good spells of dry weather are expected, however, associated with both coolish and very warm weather. Much of May's rainfall will also often be hit and miss. The headline should give a fair reflection on the coming spring overall. Confidence in the detail, however, is only low to medium and mostly based on solar and lunar archive material. Your comments are always welcome. Terry Scholey, 1st of March 2022. And that's Terry's March and spring forecast. If you'd like to see more forecasts from Terry and from Gav, please subscribe to the channel, and we'll have more videos for you very soon. Thanks for watching.